All right, we are here, episode 2. We're in this, as they say.
Who says that?
Some kid said that somewhere. They said,
Sounds,
"We in this, we out here."
he sounds stupid. We shouldn't say that.
All right, well, we will not say that then. All right, well, anyway, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into this Archive Memories, episode 2. We're gonna try to make a little better time than last time, but I make no promises to anything.
Glacial pace is what that last one was. But you know what? I'm not going to apologize. I could have spent 45 minutes talking about noise instead of 30 minutes. So you bitches will get what you get.
You'll get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. That's what they say in Netrunner.
Something.
All right. Well, the card we are starting off with today is Cyberfeeder. You want to introduce us to Cyberfeeder, Mr. Nyan, Isaac, yada yada?
Yeah, that's me. Okay. All right. Cyberfeeder is an Anarch hardware card. It costs 2 credits to install. It has the subtype of chip. It has 1 recurring credit. Use this credit to pay for using icebreakers or installing virus programs.
All right. I've always had a soft spot for this card. I'll start off by saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It feels nice to use. Like many recurring credit cards, haha, it runs into issues if you don't draw it early enough. But it's nice, right?
Yeah. Well, so I guess we'll go ahead and start off. Why is this card all right?
Well, 1 recurring credit for 2 credits. I mean, that's not a bad exchange rate. It's hardware, so it's not vulnerable like resources are. It's as safe as any card on the runner's side of the board is from corp interference. You get to use it for 2 things as well. You can use it to pay for using icebreakers or for installing virus programs. So the versatility really helps it out a lot, right? If you're playing noise and you're kind of solitaring a little bit or just installing viruses more than using icebreakers, then it's great for that. Or if you're making a run and you end up needing to use your icebreakers, it's around for that too. I find that any deck I'm putting Cyberfeeder into, it's rare that I have a turn where I don't use all of my Cyberfeeder credits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I will preface this portion of my discussion as I think I yelled at my dog a little bit while you were in that card discussion. So I'll apologize for that ahead of time. But I agree. I think that one thing that I kind of forgot about this was that you can use the Cyberfeeder credit for installing virus programs. So definitely a very good noise card for sure. There in the core set. Most viruses, I mean, even as the game kind of went on, most viruses stayed pretty low cost. Really, none of them costing more than 4, I think. Didn't any viruses ever end up costing more than 4 credits?
Was Hivemind 4? I think Hivemind was 4, and I think it was the most expensive.
Yeah, I think 4 was the highest we ever got.
Crypsis was 5. If we're
not gonna count Crypsis. Yeah, Crypsis doesn't count. Fuck that guy. But using icebreakers though is kind of the premier, I would say, effect of Cyberfeeder. I mean, especially for everybody that's not noise, right? Because that is, for all intents and purposes, right, money that you're just gonna get for the rest of the game. When it comes to breaking ice.
Yeah, you're getting money for using your icebreakers, which is doing the things that you need to do to win the game. Or if you're noise and running viruses, you're getting credits to pay for your viruses, which are winning you the game. So
yeah, for sure. And then at 1 influence, it is easily splashable into the other factions if you want to choose to do so. I mean, looking at it from a core set perspective, there wasn't a crazy amount of econ options really outside of Armitage Code Busting and Magnum Opus.
True.
And then of course your sure gambles and easy marks. But this is a really easily splashable card at 1 influence into Kate. Who of course we will get to eventually. But Kate installs this for 1 credit.
Yeah,
So if she uses it the same turn that she installs it, it's immediately paying for itself.
yeah. It's good value. It's good value.
Right. And so I think a good enough value that it is not impossible to be seen outside of the orange sphere of influence.
Agreed. Agreed. Though, as the game went on, that was something we saw less and less often as other econ solutions just packed more punch. This is kind of a slow, consistent drip.
Sure. And I mean, that I don't even think that's the case for influencing it into other factions. I think that's just the case for the card in general. I don't know that in the latter half, maybe even the latter 75% of the game's lifespan, that I ever saw this card, even out of Anarch.
Right before FFG canceled the game, right before then, I had started looking at playing Noise again, like right before he got rotated out and everything. And I was running Cyber Feeder again for that, just because it was kind of cute to run alongside Street Peddler and things. But
That's fair. I know that I built a really like virus and trashing things heavy deck because I want to say I ran it out of Edward Kim. I think it was in the last tournament I ever played in. Um, because my local area did like a farewell netrunner tournament. And brought an Edward Kim deck that did way better than I thought it was gonna do, and I want to say that Cyber Feeders were in there because I was running like Xers and stuff and like other
okay,
viruses. And I
the
want
in
to. Oh, sorry.
oh, you're good.
What was it you were gonna say?
I was just saying the inconvenient ones, the inconvenient viruses like Xer.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so, and I want to say that I was packing some ways to like recur the Xers, and I mean it worked out pretty good. In the side, I want to say that I was running Cyber Feeders, and it helped to be able to install those and get them reinstalled. Um, and then of course get into the servers to use them too. But
Yeah.
uh, so, how do you play with this card?
You want to get it out early. So hopefully you draw into one or two of them within the first few turns because you want to slap it down on the board so you're getting value out of it as soon as possible. Um, Other than that, it's basically just spend it. Spend it every turn. It's only good if you spend it. Be installing viruses regularly. Be making runs where you spend credits on those runs.
Yeah, I mean, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? I mean, you play this when you draw it, basically. It's not cost prohibitive enough that I think you really need to plan around these. I think, arguably, I mean, maybe not every time, but at least 7 out of 10 times when you draw into this card, you're going to be in a situation where you want to play it the next click, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I mean, you just do your normal runner thing, and as these come up, it's like, oh, cool, here's one of my cyber feeders, and then you play them down and save money for the rest of the game.
It's it's like putting money in your Roth. You should just do that.
Right. How do you play against this card?
Um, I mean, again, this is a fairly simple card, so there's not a lot that you have to account for. You just do the math. You say, okay, I'm looking at my opponent's credits. I don't forget that he also has a cyber feeder to pay for things. And that's about it.
Yeah, you just include it with your math. Obviously, the more taxing your server is, the more, I guess, sort of both effective and ineffective it'll be against cyber feeder, because obviously you want to try to tax them upwards of their cyber feeder credits, but any tax that your server has, from an ice perspective at least,
Yeah,
is gonna be lowered by the amount of cyber feeder credits that the runner
sure.
has.
It's a card that, as the corp, you look across the board and you get like a little bit annoyed that it exists and it's making your life slightly less convenient, but you can't really do much about it.
This is a card that if you're playing stronger together, you look at it and you're like, oh man, this is reason 6,708 that I shouldn't be playing stronger together.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put
They play the cyber feeder and they're like, no, my extra 1 credit tax.
it.
um but yeah, this isn't, I think, the card. This is like pretty fucking low on the totem pole of cards that you would ever target for like a hardware trashing ability.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, you just deal with it. That's how you play against it. You just deal with it. How did this card affect the meta, if at all?
Not much, honestly. Like part of the side effect of it being such a simple card is it just does what it says on the box here.
Yep.
Its most prominent applications were in noise decks during the first couple cycles, and that was about it.
Did Noise Shop decks even run this card?
Noise Shop decks didn't run it because you can't use these credits to pay for Personal Workshop.
That is true. I guess that's kind of a counter synergy, right? Because you don't
Yeah,
want to be paying for your
yeah,
viruses regularly.
sure. Shopless noise decks that were just running like Pawn Shop and Wildside and stuff would use these because it's all about like getting as many viruses into and at your hand and then onto the board as you can. But yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, it was just there. It was around.
yeah.
All right. Flavor discussion. I really, really like the Cyber Feeder art.
Yeah, me too. And not just
Like,
because I have a thing for like that haircut on chicks.
yeah, right. Honestly, this is probably top 5 Netrunner art for me.
It's classic. And last time we talked a little bit about how some of the early art suffers from being like a little bit comic bookish and
Yeah.
in kind of their aesthetic. That does not apply here. It's just really good looking art.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out, I don't know if anyone else has ever kind of looked at this and noticed this, but is the Cyber Feeder art a 3D render?
I suspect that it isn't, but it has kind of that look to it a little bit.
Yeah, like if you look the particular areas of the art that really make me think it looks like a 3D render are the part where her sleeve is torn right there, and her hair. Like I don't know what it is. It looks like a 3D render that has like with like kind of like a Borderlandsy, I guess, kind of like cell shading
Yeah,
effect on it.
I think if I had any idea about art or artistic terms at all, I'd say something clever about the shading and the use of light or something that's making
That's
that
fair.
effect. But yeah.
But yeah, we're dumb, so. All right. But yeah, I love the Cyber Feeder art. I agree with you that it's classic. I mean, honestly, when I think about Netrunner art, like Cyber Feeder is one of the first that comes to
Yeah.
mind for me.
Agreed.
And the flavor text cool too. You know, I feel almost naked without it. You know, yeah. Short,
Right.
sweet, to the point.
All in all, solid flavor matching the effect as well. It comes together.
Okie dokie. So, let's slap a rating on ye old Cyber Feeder here. What do you got for this one?
I'm probably gonna catch flack for this, but I'm gonna give it a 4.
4, really? That's really high.
Yeah, I mean, this is I will freely admit this is personal bias is a substantial amount of why I'm rating it this high. This was a key card in the noise deck that I played for a very long time when noise started to come back right before they rotated him out. It was a great card in that deck as well that just let me play at a high pace, and I really appreciate it for that. Now, its impact beyond that specific implication I recognize as small, but this is my rating and I'm giving it 4.
All right. Well, I am on the opposite end. I'm going to give it a 3, but I was almost ready to give it a 2. Like, just because it served its purpose for a time, and then, like I said, for probably about 75% of the game's life cycle, just was binder fodder.
That's totally fair. You're not at all wrong about that.
I do love the art and flavor, and I think it's a neat card, so I'm going to put it at a 3. Also, interestingly enough, for a little bit of personal bias of my own. Like, I've always had a sweet spot for Cyber Feeder, and I really don't know why. I don't play it. I didn't slot it into hardly any of my decks. I just every time I saw Cyber Feeder in my card box, I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Had
all
that
right.
logic.
Well, that one's in the books. Let us move on to Grimoire. Um, Grimoire. It is a 3 cost to play hardware with the console subtype. So our first console here of the core set of the game, first of many. It gives +2 MU, and it reads that whenever you install a virus program, place 1 virus counter on that program. Limit 1 console per player. It is out of the Anarch faction and it costs 2 influence. So, how
Why,
are
why,
we
why,
feeling?
why don't you start us off with this card? Quite nice, but niche.
Um, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I would say that this was almost a staple. I mean, what other console did you run outside of Grimoire out of Anarch for like the first fucking like 2 years of the game?
First 2 years of the game, not much because there wasn't jack shit else to work with. There was Spinal Modem, which sucked,
Yep.
and
Okay, we'll get to Spinal Modem.
we'll
Spinal
get to
Modem, it'll get its time.
Spinal Modem. And then later there was Deep Red, which was incredibly specific and also sucked.
Yeah, a Deep Red didn't had some meme deck implications, but Grimoire is just good though. Like Grimoire, so all right, I'll make my case for Grimoire here about why I would say that it's a good card at worst. Um, so here's the thing, right? You're running it out of the Anarch faction. It's 3 to play, which isn't bad. That's same as say a card like Desperado. Granted, I mean, obviously on a different level than Desperado. Um, but it's not some like 4 or 5. It's not fucking 9 credits to install this thing like the fucking toolbox. Okay.
True.
Like a perfectly reasonably priced console. And chances are you're running it out of Anarch. I really can't see many arguments for why you would spend the 2 to splash this somewhere else.
Where else are the
Um,
viruses?
yeah, Anarch's got the viruses, right? So that's where you're going to play this out of. And if you're running Anarch, especially in the first couple years of the game, you are running viruses, and you are running viruses that are going to benefit pretty significantly from getting that boost of that first virus counter on it for free.
Yeah.
The implications here are insane. When you play that first parasite, which is a card you're going to be running out of Anarch regardless, you're going to get that first virus counter to kill an ice wall. Kill any 1 strength ice. Ice wall's obviously the main example. When you install that medium, if you run with it that turn, you're gonna see an extra card rather than not. Same with Nerve Agent,
People have won games off of that many times.
right? Your Data Sucker. I mean, think about it. You are locked out of a server because there's a you know a fucking Bastion in front of or not Bastion, or there's a 4 strength code gate, let's say, in front of your one of your
No,
central servers or a
Chum
remote server.
is in the core set. We'll say Chum is there.
Yeah, Chum's in there, and maybe point is that when you play that first Data Sucker, right, it's going to come out with a token to where now suddenly, your Yogg or your Mimic is going to be useful instead of like, okay, well, now I need to figure out how to get into Archive so I can get a Data Sucker token and so on and so forth.
For sure. This plays very nicely with all of the cards that you have access to, pretty much, in the core set in particular, but that only got better as you went on.
So that's why I think Grimoire is a good card. Now, did it become less good as time went on? Yes. But I would say that, I mean, Grimoire had earned its stripes. Grimoire put the work in. It did what it needed to. It carried Anarch through the first few years of the game without having another console to use, and I think that it did completely admirably at that.
Sure. I mean, just the virus counter on parasites, if nothing else, is
Yeah.
very useful. It's to say nothing of making imps 50% better.
Oh shit, yeah. I mean, just so many reasons, right? Like your imp trashes another card. I mean, like insane.
All right. So, Kika, as the corp, how do you play against Grimoire?
Uh, you just deal with it. This is another just deal with it card, right? Um, you just keep that in mind that hey, every time this bastard across the table from me is going to play a virus, it's going to get an extra counter. And I'm just going to have to understand that that's the reality of the world that I live in. Now, inversely to what I had said about Cyberfeeder, if you happen to be lucky enough to where you're, playing at a point in the game where hardware trashing comes up and is something that you can do, this is probably a pretty damn good target for that. Especially, I mean, given that it supplies that +2 MU and then just console effect itself. If you get rid of this, kind of in the middle throes of the game, that probably upsets the runner's game plan pretty significantly.
I would agree with that.
But other than that, you just cry at the fact that the parasites and data suckers and things get an extra counter.
All right. Just throw away your ice walls when you see this.
No, because the thing, well, I guess this is really going to be more saved for the conversation that we'll eventually have about Ice Wall itself. But because the thing about Ice Wall is you can advance it to make it stronger, right? But
That's a big time investment to save it from a parasite.
yeah, I mean honestly, yeah, you probably just let it die. You probably just say I'm sorry, Ice Wall, but it had to come to this. Um, yeah, but I think that about covers it with how you play against Grimoire. Is you just deal with it
Yep. Yep. Seems about right.
and you don't advance your Ice Wall to keep it out of parasite range because that's stupid.
You maybe just stop advancing your ice in general because you're just, and that's maybe not Grimoire specifically. Maybe that's more parasite, but it's just it's just a waste of time.
Yeah, I think honestly, and really this is going to be a conversation I think that's more for Parasite. At that point, if you're getting the sweet Grimoire Parasite combo and they're making you cry with that, I've always played against that. It's just, all right, let's fucking get this out of the way. Like, just install over this shit, pretend it never happened.
We're going back to square one.
Yeah,
We're
this is a
not.
foregone conclusion. Like, I'm going to be in control of this ice getting trashed. That's kind of what I would do, honestly. When I played, I would be like, I'm not even going to give this fucking stupid runner the satisfaction of their parasite trashing my ice. I'm going to trash this of my own volition. I'm going to install over it. I'm going to put it in the trash. I'm in control of this.
Choosing your destiny, going to your death willingly versus being dragged to it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, as the runner, how are you playing this?
Uh, you don't even have to do anything. You put it in your deck and then you're done.
It's pretty easy, isn't it?
Yeah, you put it in your deck with your other viruses, and you smile when you draw it. Like I said, at 3 credits, it is a reasonable install cost. Um, you aren't always going to be able to take that tempo hit necessarily, but in most circumstances, you're going to want to plop this down as soon as you get it. This is a great opening hand card. Like, you fucking start with this sure gamble, a data sucker, a parasite, a mimic, and who gives a shit what else. Like, you're in the money.
Yeah, yeah, feels pretty good.
Yeah, like you're in a good spot at that point. So yeah, how do you play with it as runner? You put it in your deck, and and hopefully you built a deck that uses it.
This is the genius insight that everyone, all 8 of you out there, are tuning in for. So
Yeah, this is what you wanted. Honestly, this is the hot takes that you come here for. Now we're on flavor discussion, right?
no, how did this impact the meta?
Oh shit, you're right. Um, I would say that I don't think it impacted the meta. I think it was just a significant part of the early meta.
Made people hate Parasite even more.
Yeah. This did not drive the meta in a certain direction. This just went along with the flow that other cards were taking the meta.
Yes.
Because you absolutely slot this in Noise Shop, right? There's no way you don't.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. So this was just along for the Noise Shop ride. Um, Eventually it fell out of favor just because Anarch decks and decks in general wanted to do different things. But like I said, for that first couple of years, this is the console you ran out of Anarch, and whatever you were going to do out of Anarch, Grimoire was going to help you do it, more likely than not.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the flavor. How's this one taste going down for you?
Um, this art's always been a little weird for me because I think that the console should look more like a book.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't look like a grimoire at all. This doesn't even look like... I can't even see that this opens and closes. Like, does this thing even open and close like a book?
Who can say for sure? Like, I like the color scheme of
Yeah.
the art. I will give it that. Like, the green effects and everything I think is fitting, but in some ways it almost looks like original Netrunner art. You
I don't know
know?
if I go that far. That's a powerful statement that you just made there.
I don't mean to offend it that much because I really don't dislike Grimoire's art. It's okay. But it's got some kind of a quality of like a 90s hacker film to it, right?
You're not wrong. Especially with the color green. I don't know what it is about hacking stuff in the 90s, but boy howdy, was it going to be green. I don't know what hacking is going to be like, 10, 20, 30 years from now. What I do know is that it's going to be green. But no, I see what you're saying, and that it's definitely got kind of a throwback feel to it with the art. But I mean, I think it's cool enough.
All right, you want to know what my real gripe with the flavor of this card is?
What's that?
Why in the hell is the flavor text from Wizard?
All right, you are 100% right. This is the stupidest shit ever. Honestly, like, Damon Stone, Lucas, Michael Boggs, I want to go on record if you ever hear this, that, a lot of mistakes may have been made throughout the course of Netrunner's design history, and just the game as a whole. But you can rest assured that this is the stupidest shit that ever happened in Netrunner. What do you mean this is Wizard's console? What the fuck are you talking about?
Does Wizard install viruses? No, no. You messed up, and it's time for you to come forward and admit your faults.
Yeah, honestly, I think that every person that was involved with the design and production of Android Netrunner should be canceled until they make a public apology for the fact that Grimoire is being assessed as Wizard's console and not Noise's. Like, it is complete bullshit, and I will not stand for it a day longer.
I'm glad we're in agreement.
Yeah, actually, I had completely forgotten about that until you mentioned it. That always made me mad. That always bugged me. Fucking Noise. He always hits console with some fucking headphones. Like, shut up.
Like, Turntable is a fine console, don't get me wrong, but what the hell? Viruses and noise. This does not need to be spelled out for anyone.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, the toolbox is fucking Geist's console. Like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, it's just it's stupid.
Some clear and obvious bullshit. Not to mention, this is the only runner console in the core set which does not belong flavor wise to the runner of that faction in the core set.
Yeah, you are right. I mean, there's just so many layers of stupidity with this
bunch of dumb shit. All right, how are we rating this bad boy?
I almost want to dock it a point because of the discussion that we just had. Like, that brought up some repressed memories. But I'll look past that. I feel like I'm more the kind of guy to give a card extra points or an extra point, for really good or really fun flavor. But I'll try to reserve myself and knock a good card down because it has stupid flavor. So I feel like Grimoire's got to be a 4 from me.
Yeah, I honestly have to agree with you there. It does what it does really well, and it's not super flashy. It doesn't have a lot of complicated interactions or anything, but it's just really, really good.
Yeah, it's just good. It just does what it does, and it does it well. Alrighty, let us move right along here to man. What to just a card? We got a card in front of us here.
That is true.
This may be the rest of the episode.
All right, you want me to take this bad boy away?
Yeah, tell our sweet listeners what card you're looking at.
All right. Up next, we have Corroder. This is the first icebreaker that we're looking at. It is an Anarch program icebreaker fractor. It has 2 abilities: 1 credit, break barrier subroutine, and 1 credit plus 1 strength. And it has a base strength of 2. It is 2 to install, 2 influence, and costs 1 memory.
Boy, howdy, is that a card? So tell me, why is this maybe the best icebreaker in the game throughout the entire game's history? Most likely.
I mean, let's be fair. It did get beaten out by Paperclip late.
You are right. I guess I did forget that toward the last couple of years that finally they decided that Corroder's just not good enough. We just really need to make an even better card.
There needs to be a better Corroder, a better fractor than Corroder, clearly. No, but Corroder is gold, okay? All right, 2 install cost, easy. This card existed in every runner deck for basically 4 years. Every single runner deck. 2 to install, 1 memory. Very easy. Everyone can afford to install this. Everyone's got the memory for it. 2 base strength. That's solid. That's kind of normal baseline for a lot of the good breakers. 1 credit barrier subroutine, 1 credit plus 1 strength. 2 influence, so it's pretty cheap to import. What this is just cheap.
Yeah, this card has all the magic numbers, just about. Like you said, 2 to install, super cheap. I mean, Kate throws this down for one measly credit. The 1 for 1 is the biggest thing, right?
Yes.
That's kind of the magic number for icebreakers. Is, you know, obviously you're not generally going to get much better than that, though. You know, you can and do. As we will talk about here probably very soon. But it's flexible. You don't have to worry about weird math with weird ice strengths. It's just straightforward. I boost the strength, I break the subs, and I'm done. I think 2 is a. I know you had mentioned that 2 is like a reasonable, like a okay starting strength, I guess. I mean, I think that this card would have remained being the powerhouse, or not necessarily the powerhouse that it was, but the staple that it was, if it started at fucking 0 or 1 strength.
Maybe. I think dropping it down that low has substantial impact. Just when you look at the barriers that you run into, right? The most common thing you have to deal with when dealing with barriers isn't a ton of subroutines. It's boosting up strength to match. So lower strength is going to make a difference there.
Right. But starting at 2 strength is great.
Yes, agreed.
You don't have to boost for Ice Wall unless they've advanced it. As you get into the myriad of other like just cheap low strength gear check barriers, you don't have to boost for your paper walls, your ice walls. You don't have to boost for, I don't know. There's a bunch of other shit that came out. There's some Jinteki barriers that were low strength. Wraparound, of course. I mean, that was more of an AI hate card, but wraparound, you hate to see this card if you're running a wraparound.
Agreed. Yeah, because it means the gear check that you force by making them install a fractor is tiny.
Very tiny. And then really I think the biggest offense, and honestly, you might argue that given the environment of the core set and kind of that first couple years of the game, that it's necessary. But I think the biggest magic number here is the 2 influence.
Yeah, yeah.
Every deck has Corroder. Every deck had Corroder, like you said, for the first how many years of the game? Like, if you wanted to have a good pair barrier breaker, you were basically when you were going to spend your starting influence, you were when you were building a deck. When you got that to that point of building your deck, I would argue that 75% of the 75% of the time, excuse me, your first 4 influence spent was going to be on 2 copies of Corroder.
Yeah, yeah. It was just so worth it, particularly early in the game cycle. It just stood out so much compared to other fractors.
I think that this probably should have been 3 influence, but there's probably arguments to be made that that would have been too much for what was available in the core set and kind of throughout the early portions of the game.
Yeah, I think rather than having it be 3 influence, even though I'm an Anarch player, so maybe my perspective is a little bit skewed on this. Rather than having it be 3 influence, I would have rather seen it be 3 credits, maybe, or both.
Yeah,
It's just its math works out so well.
basically every number that you look at on this card is good to great.
Yeah.
All right, so how do you play with this card as a runner?
You put it in your deck. Always. I mean, we kind of touched on this.
Spicy takes.
It was everywhere. Everyone ran this card, and there were obvious reasons for it. Okay, so playing with it is the same way you play with icebreakers in general. So touch on that, I guess, a little bit. You basically play it when you need it, or if you're making a run and you have a good sense of what the ice you might run into is, you get through barriers with it, which particularly early on in the game's life cycle was most of the ice that actually ended runs were barriers. And so you install this, you get through the barriers, you steal agendas.
Yeah, just to kind of touch on some of the implications of the statement that you made of playing it when you needed it or when you had a good read on what ice your opponent had. This is a card that is so valuable that you do want to be careful in that this is the card that you hate to run into in Ichi, when you only got 1 click left, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
because this is the card that I would say most of the time, right? Especially in the early onset of that of the game, and of course, given on what type of ice your opponent's packing, or I guess what you're packing in this example, you're gonna trash the corroder, right? Get that shit off the table.
Right.
I don't want to see that anymore.
Absolutely. And that's kind of a perfect transition into like how you play around this as a corp, and you nailed it, is you try to hit it with your program trashes.
Yes, this is when you are, especially in that early game, right? When you have that sneaky roto turret over archives,
Oh, I
and
love the roto turret over archives.
classic play, right? Oh, I'm gonna go. Hey, look at me! I'm gonna go get a data sucker token. Fuck you, trash corroder. I hate you. But yeah, get the corroder off the table. This is gonna be. Is it fair to say that 70% of the time that if the trash program subs that you're able to fire are gonna be pointed at corroder?
I mean, of course, it depends a little bit on the ice you've drawn. If you've basically seen none of your barriers and you've got like 4 code gates out, then you probably kill our old boy Yogg instead. But
Yeah, I guess that's probably a little bit of hyperbole on my part to say that, oh man, you just trash this all the time, because you're right. It's
you're
gonna
right.
come down.
All things being equal, yeah, corroder is an obvious target.
Yeah, so yeah, the way you play against it is you just try to get it off the table, try to catch the runner slipping, try to be sneaky with what you install. Um, try to, play with, kind of the best sleight of hand that you can manage, as far as where you install your sentries, your roto turrets or ichis. Um and try to get it off the table that way. Other than that, um, you just
Well, you know how to play around it, right?
yeah.
Because every time you're doing the math about what it takes to get through your ice, you're assuming that your opponent has corroder. Whether or not you've seen it, all of your math is based on the idea of how much will it cost them to get through this with corroder.
Yeah, exactly. That's not. Yeah, the question that you ask when you're placing your barriers down isn't how much do I think the runner is going to have to pay. It's how much does corroder have to pay for
Yes.
this. And yeah, as far as playing with it, just be careful. Don't be careless and get it trashed early. Because I mean, I'm just saying, especially if it's early, right? Maybe you drew two corroders, hucked one in the trash, and then played the other one and made a run on that archive roto turrets without your mimic installed. You're in a bad way. You're gonna have a bad time. But same as any other icebreaker, I think, like you had said, just run carefully if you're gonna install this.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. How did this card affect the meta, if at all?
I mean, we've answered this question. It was everywhere. Your ice suite as a corp, thinking about, all right, if I put this barrier in, how much does it cost Corroder to get through it? When you're building a runner deck, you're like, how many copies of Corroder do I need? It didn't affect the meta. It was just part of the meta. It was just that's like asking how the foundation of your house affects the house.
Yeah. It's like asking how the game of Netrunner affected the meta.
Basically.
It's a staple. I mean, this is one of those cards because I hate the kind of card that Corroder is, and that for most of the game, it's a card that you, for all intents and purposes, couldn't afford not to be running.
Yeah.
So it just was the meta. It was part of the meta. And anywhere that the meta went, Corroder was almost always good enough, at least, until, the office supply that shall not be named showed up. And it was just going to be a part of wherever the meta went.
Yep. That pretty much sums it up.
All right, what do we think about the flavor on Corroder? I have a couple things to say about the flavor on Corroder, actually.
Let's hear
I don't fucking get
it.
Like, what? What is this? What am I looking at?
I mean, it's kind of nice to look at, but
It's cool, I guess.
This was one of the questions always with Corroder, because what seems to be happening is you're looking at a barrier being broken down.
Oh, so that's an interesting point. So, I mean, really, then we never see Corroder.
Right. All we see is Corroder's effects. Corroder is a ghost.
Oh, okay. I kind of just always, just subconsciously was like, yes, Corroder, the glowing rectangle that breaks barriers. But you're right. That is like a barrier being blasted away. So that means, yeah, you're right. Corroder is somewhere off frame. It's like biblical angels. Like we just have no idea what Corroder could possibly even look like. Like we couldn't even comprehend what a Corroder looks like.
Corroder is just Thanos snapping barriers. That's all it is.
Yeah. How about the flavor text?
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Nice to see your boy Guru in here. If at first you don't succeed, boosted strength and try again. Yeah, I mean that's correct.
That is true. I mean, not really though, because Guru's kind of being a little dishonest here. Because you need to boost the strength before you don't. Like, why would you not succeed and then boost the strength and try again? Like that order of operations doesn't seem to really make very much sense.
Yeah, which I suppose is just the flavor thing, is like keep boosting until the strength is high enough or whatever, and it's it's fine.
How come we never saw Guru? How come we never had a Guru runner?
Because Lucas let us all down. He was a disappointment.
That's true. Anyway, let's slap a rating on this. I don't think that we can really cover much more about our boy Rotor here.
I mean, it's 5, right? Like, I'd like to have some hot take here, but there's nothing to say.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. It's got to be a 5. Like, you hate to see it, you really do. But a Rotor is a absolute staple of an icebreaker, or at least was, for the majority of the game's life cycle, and pretty much nothing bad can ever be said about Corroder, except that it's too good. And when a card's only negative thing you can say about it is that it's too good, it's got to be a 5, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so I think that's our first unanimous 5, I believe.
Looks that way, yeah.
Or maybe not. Did we both give Stimhack a 5?
Oh, maybe we did. Maybe we did both give Stimhack a 5.
Yeah, we did both give StimHack a 5, which almost makes this seem a little weird because StimHack and Corroder are definitely on two different levels. But you know what? Fuck it.
They kind of got there for different reasons.
That's true. StimHack worked hard to get the 5. Corroder just fucking had like rich parents.
Exactly. Corroder is a trust fund, maybe.
Yeah, Corroder's a piece of shit. Fuck you, Corroder. Let's move on. All right. Man, an Anarch just had some shit in the core set.
Boy, did it.
I'm coming to find. I'm coming to find out.
All right, Aaron, you want to tell the people about Data Sucker?
Boy, howdy do I. I would love nothing more. So Data Sucker is a one to install one memory program with the virus subtype. It reads, whenever you make a successful run on a central server, place one virus counter on Data Sucker. And you can spend a hosted virus counter to make the rest piece of ice that is currently being encountered have -1 strength until the end of the encounter. It is one influence out of the Anarch faction, and it has dash strength. It does not work with ice that way.
So, why did this card crush everyone's soul for years?
So, and I don't want to speak too strongly about this, but Data Sucker may have been a mistake from the get go. It is. Here's the weird thing about Data Sucker. I think I'll actually point out is that I think this is one of the maybe not rare, but one of the cards where kind of like in the core set initially, right, and then until those first few data packs in that initial cycle, that everybody knew Data Sucker was good, but it took a while, I think, for that light bulb to turn on in like the collective Netrunner community's heads that, oh, this is like really good.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, out of the core set, I mean, when I was playing like early, and I was looking at like initial, like Netrunner videos, just in that really early Netrunner community, like there was no fucking like Desperado Data Sucker fucking click compression conversation. Nobody was talking about that shit. Nobody was fucking putting Data Sucker in their criminal decks.
But boy, did that happen later.
Yeah, because really, once we got to part 2 of Netrunner Degeneracy, which was Andy Sucker, this was when you really started to hate seeing this little fucker.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's talk about the specifics of how this works here, right? So every time you run on a central server, you get a token which you can spend to reduce the strength of ice.
Basically, you get money. I mean,
yeah,
for all intents and purposes.
Basically, you get money that you can only spend on getting past ice. Here's the thing. It's rewarding you for doing the thing you should already be doing to win the game with more of what you need to do that more. You see how this is a self-repeating pattern where they endlessly, you have a couple of these on the board and you run and you get more of them and you keep running and you keep running and it's cheap and it's easy and you throw dirty laundry into archives just because you're a piece of shit and you can.
Yeah, it's disgusting, really. And one of the other problems too, I guess right, is, so that's just all to say, right, hey, saving money on your runs, enabling the use of your Yogs and your Mimics, to be able to get into servers. You're basically just you're getting a net gain, a lot of times from getting into servers, which is like, what the fuck? Especially, like I said, the Andy Sucker, deck archetype where you're account siphoning the shit out of them. So you account siphon them and you get a Desperado credit and you get 10 credits and you get a Data Sucker counter and you get a trophy for being the biggest dick on the planet. It's just bad. It's just in a bad way. But right, so that's all of that to say, or I guess saying all of that, and you're not even touching on the fact that this plus Parasite and it's just makes it all so much worse.
Absolutely.
Um, like this is probably a pretty controversial opinion, especially for an Anarch player like you. But there needed to be some sort of wording on Data Sucker or Parasite to where they did not work together.
Maybe. I think what I would have done in retrospect is I would have limited Data Sucker to once a turn.
Yeah, that's fair. Once
Because
per turn on getting the virus counter, or once per
on
turn on.
probably on getting the virus counter.
Okay, I was gonna say,
So
or
so
once per turn on using the
it's
ability.
something that you can save up to use in big ways, but then it's more vulnerable to virus purges.
True.
Rather than it's just you can constantly use it as you spend it because you're just getting it on every single run. I think it's just its upward limit was too high.
Yeah, it just could do too many good things too often without anybody saying anything. I mean, this card plus Parasite, I mean, really more specifically, though, this card is the reason why they fucking invented like 3 cards in a row that purged virus counters better to try to fucking make up for it.
Right, and it was this more than Parasite, really,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Data Sucker was in all of the top runner decks for years.
Yeah, Data Sucker was an absolute staple in the. I mean, it is. Then the deck archetype Andy Sucker. It is part of the name.
Okay, well, let's use this opportunity to go a little bit out of order. Let's talk about the impact this had on the meta then.
Yeah, because I mean, I think for a lot of for all intents and purposes, we kind of already described how you play with this card, right? And playing against this card is that you just cry and you throw Netrunner in the garbage. Um, no, but this card had I mean, caution myself to say like profound effect on the meta of the game. As soon as people realized that doing things that you're going to do and getting multiple benefits for doing that thing is really good, Data Sucker was like, oh yeah, like you're gonna wish that I never got printed. Because honestly, I mean, without Data Sucker, like so many of those early degenerate runner decks, kind of immediately past the noise shop era, and
Mhm.
overlapping the noise shop era as well. Those were kind of the top two, like tournament, dickhead, net deck, a number one decks, during that time frame was Andy Sucker
Sure.
and Noise Shop.
Andy Sucker running primarily the Anarch Breaker Suite with Data Suckers and account siphons and all the other criminal bullshit. Desperado
Yep.
obviously synergizes wonderfully with Data Sucker.
Yep, for sure.
And then immediately following that, we had Catman, which was also
Ooh.
Data Sucker degeneracy.
Oh yeah, that's true. I kind of forgot about fucking Atman. Atman's how you say it, right? That's how you're
Yeah,
supposed to say it.
I believe that's right.
I don't care though. I'm gonna call it Atman because that's what I want to do. But yeah, no, Atman fucking really blew that shit wide open. Like Atman and Data Sucker. Like
Right.
holy
It's
shit.
ridiculous. Ridiculous. So, as a quick reference, in case anyone out there has forgotten, or if for some reason there's someone new to Netrunner listening to this, hi out there.
Yeah, right.
Atman was an AI breaker that when you installed it, you would pay X number of credits, and its strength would be set to X permanently. But it could only break ice of an equal strength to itself. Whereas normally, if you have an icebreaker of greater strength than whatever ice it's interacting with, it can still break it. Atman only if it's of exactly equal strength to whatever ice it's interacting with. The thing with Data Sucker was you'd install 1 or 2 Atman, and then you just have Data Suckers there to fill in the gaps and just adjust the ice down to whatever level they needed to be for Atman to break them. And effectively, you're only paying for the subroutines on ice at that point. It was absurdly cheap.
Yeah, I mean, really, you got your Otmans at what it was a 0, 2, and 4 strength,
Basically, yeah.
and then you had your Data Suckers, and you just pretty much waltzed into every server.
like a piece of garbage.
And really the data sucker, Ottman, Parasite, and just criminal, right? Like trio, like this just kind of batch of cards ended up I think kind of shifting the game into a bit of a spiral where huge chunks of data packs ended up being dedicated to printing hate cards for these cards.
Because it was a big problem, right?
Right.
While all of this was going on, the runner win rate was enormously higher than Corpse.
Yeah.
It was a real struggle in competitive play for corporations to be able to keep up with runners.
Yeah, because they were just going to get through your ice. They were going to destroy your ice. They were going to make money getting into your server, probably. They were basically going to net even or better on all their runs. And it was just going to be a shitty time.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
All right. I think that we've said about all there can be said about Data Sucker just from a mechanics and game perspective.
Data Sucker is a garbage person who's really good at his job.
Yes. Data Sucker is like it's like there's this guy that you just like fucking hate, right? Like he's just a complete dickhead, but just is immensely successful and like no matter what he does, just immediately succeeds at it. Doesn't even really have to put any effort towards it.
Right, and
Like
all
the
of this just
one
makes you hate him more.
Right, and like the one hobby that you have that you're like pretty decent at, the guy tries to be nice to you, right? Because like ultimately he is a pretty nice guy, but like he's still just like a dickhead, and so he sees it like, oh, you play the drums, oh, cool, I should get into that, and then like he's just like immediately like 10 times better than you, even though you've been doing it for like 10 years. That's what Data Sucker is.
Yeah, yeah. Data Sucker's name is Kyle.
Yeah, Data Sucker is an absolute Kyle, and I hate him. All right, flavor discussion, I guess.
I like the art. I like the alternate art the promo art they came out with later even better.
Yeah, the
Um,
promo art was cool. I
it is a
will
little
say,
bit weird, like what kind of winged tentacle creature this is.
yeah, it's like a weird cyber angel with dreadlocks, with noodle dreadlocks, which is a little odd. I will tell you that I did not know that that's what this was for like my first, like probably few years of playing the game. I thought it was just like a weird worm that was sucking data into it. I didn't see like the wing as being a wing. I thought that it was just like a curvy worm.
It might almost be better that way.
Yeah, like here, I'll try to explain what I'm seeing. Like, so imagine that like the head is the head, right? But then imagine it as just like a worm, and it's sort of like it's inching
It's
forward. So the
contorting a bit.
yeah, so like how caterpillars inch forward, they just kind of like fold their body up, you know. That's what I always saw this as.
Yeah,
Um,
no, yeah, I can kind of see it.
yeah, and then one day I was like, oh, that is not what this is at all. It's okay though. This like art has always just been kind of whatever to me, honestly. Even when I thought it was a worm.
Yeah, fair enough.
But the revolution there, I guess, yeah, the revelation of it being a weird noodle angel did not make me really like it anymore.
No, it doesn't really seem like an improvement. Like you can kind of see how a worm would suck, but what is this dreadlock angel doing sucking?
Yeah, why does the noodle angel suck, you know?
All
All
right.
right. I think we both know where this is going.
Yeah.
Gotta give my boy Data Sucker a 0.
Yep. Yep. Get him off the screen.
Yep, hate him. Yeah, no, I mean, gotta be a 5, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Like
It hurts, but it's just
I
it's
understand out there you're getting bored of us like rating all of these cards really well, but it's not our fault. Send your hate mail to Lucas Litzinger.
Send your hate mail to Christian T. Peterson.
Yep. Yep. It's a 5. That's it. But no, get it
Yep.
off the screen. I don't want to talk about this guy anymore.
All right. Normally I'd say we'd call it, but honestly, I think we could probably get through this guy pretty quick. And we got to do one more card than the first episode, right?
Yeah, we can do this.
We got to improve somehow. All right. Take us away. What is this card?
All right, next up is Djinn. Djinn is an Anarch program. It costs 2 credits to install. 1 memory is 2 influence. Djinn is a demon subtype program. Its text reads, Djinn can host up to 3 memory of non-icebreaker programs. The memory costs of hosted programs do not count against your memory limit. For 1 click and 1 credit, you can search your stack for a virus program, reveal it, and add it to your grip, then shuffle your stack.
That's a card.
Yep, it's got a lot of text on it.
It sure says a lot of things.
Yeah. All right. Kika, Aaron, why did nobody care about this card after 6 months?
Did anybody ever care about it at all?
It was the only tutor that Anarchs had.
Yeah. Djinn's a weird card, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Djinn and not Djinn, but I guess I don't really know.
Who gives a shit?
So, the reason why nobody cared about this card is because, and honestly, until I had kind of read some Netrunner DB reviews of it, I didn't really know how bad it, or I guess not bad, but how like uneventful it is. Because it's really even like because the MU effect, right, for the most part is kind of its big thing, right?
Mm.
Is you look at the numbers, right, and you're like, oh man, this thing can host 3 MU of programs, like, oh, that's cool. But it costs 1 MU, right? So it only gives you 2 extra MU.
It only gives you 2 MU. It doesn't give you any MU for icebreakers. And
yeah.
so it's mostly just for viruses, basically.
Yeah, it's just a virus support card.
And it's a target. If you do the thing we talked about earlier where you go run archives because you think you're really cheeky and you're going to feed your data suckers, boom, rototurret. Rototurret only gets to trash 1 program, but guess which one it trashes? It looks at Djinn and blows it up, and all the hosted programs are gone.
No, not my Djinn that was hosting a data sucker and another Djinn that was hosting a data sucker and another Djinn and a data sucker in my medium. Oh no!
Yeah. That's why.
You just put your whole deck in the garbage.
Yep, just throw it away, start over, cry yourself a snack.
All right. But yeah, I agree that it was a target. Even as a tutor, it's like kind of whatever. Because it doesn't install it. You have to pay the click and a credit. It's just like too much. Like just barely. Like if it was just a click, obviously it can't be a credit because then that's instant speed bullshit. That has way too many fucking ramifications, and then Noise Shop probably would have never gotten stopped playing for the whole rest of the game's life cycle. But if it was like just a click and didn't cost a credit, like that's a little more reasonable because then, like, it
costs a quarter of your turn to use it, but
yeah, well, and then if you want to install it, because this doesn't install the virus, right? So you're looking at half your turn to get it installed, and just a credit on top of that. It's not awesome.
No, it's not awesome. You know what this card feels like to me?
What's that?
It feels like during playtesting, they kept running into the situation where they're like, I don't have the memory to install my viruses. I don't have the memory to install my viruses because I've got all my icebreakers installed or whatever. And so they just printed this to fill the gap. It's like, there, you can put your viruses on that and you can find them through it too. Congratulations. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I agree. It's necessary, I'd say.
I guess, like early on, it served a function, but
yeah, because if you're just playing core set, right, which always sounds like alien and stupid to me, but there's people out there who bought the core set of Netrunner and played that, and that's just all that they ever played with.
True.
And so from that perspective, Djinn, I think, it may be necessary,
perhaps
for that type of environment. But ultimately, I mean, the MU you're getting from Grimoire is gonna probably be enough most of the time, you know.
Yeah.
Um, how do you play with this card?
If you have viruses, you can search for them and then install them on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is like the argument can be made that if you're really wanting to do like some heavy ice destruction, right, you can go fish out your parasites so that you can
Sure,
keep
this
servers
can.
thin, you know.
Yeah, it's a hedge against your deck just screwing you over if you're like, oh my god, I really need my parasites to get past this thing, and so on and so forth. Yes, it serves a function, but it doesn't feel good to use. You'd rather just have a more efficient engine built otherwise. This feels like a card that is here to keep you from losing, but it doesn't feel great in the process.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. Um, I would say that if you're slotting this card, there's better cards to slot, or all you've got is the core set, and then it's like, all right, well, you know, just go find whatever the
You don't
best
really have
virus you
choices
can is.
anyway, so
Yeah, so you know, just install it, go find the best virus you can think of, and you know, feel bad about it. And then I think we already talked about how you play against it if you're the corp. Is if you can ever trash a program, you just trash this if it's got some shit installed on it, because that's going to be real funny.
Yep. That's the most memorable parts that anyone has ever experienced while using this card is just losing a ton of programs when it gets trashed.
Oh yeah, everybody remembers their first Djinn tree trashing or being trashed. Like it's an incredible feeling to trash one card that really means that you trash, you know, however many cards.
Yep.
All right, this card didn't affect the meta. I'm not even gonna fucking humor that conversation. This card existed so far outside of the fucking meta that this shit may as well be a Yu-Gi-Oh card at that point.
The art kind of could be.
Yeah, let's talk about the flavor. This art is a little weird though, isn't it?
A bit.
Like anime. It's like a weird like anime
It
or
does
some
it does
shit.
look a little bit anime.
This dude's casting like a fucking Hadouken Kamehameha, like, and he's smug about it too.
Yeah, a smug net Kamehameha or whatever the
Yeah,
fuck.
you know how it's said. Don't fucking pretend. You know.
Like the functionality of it I kind of like. It's a daemon, which in software terms is basically a program which reacts to scripted events. It just runs in the
Sure.
background, and that's kind of flavorful. It works alongside this. It fetches your viruses and it hosts them, and that's all kind of it all kind of fits with the idea of having this demon genie program. But
Yeah. Um. Did the demon subtype ever actually really have any implications?
so it never had anything that like directly interacted with its subtype, but demons were always like programs which hosted other programs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember, you know, like Scheherazade and shit. I just couldn't remember if for mechanics purposes, if the demon subtype ever actually mattered for anything.
Yeah, not in particular.
Gotcha. All right. No flavor text, so all we get is the fucking Street Fighter genie, Street Fighter Net genie.
Oh boy.
All right, well, let's slap a rating on this bad boy. What are we feeling?
It gets 1 star.
One.
One.
Let's see. Yeah,
I mean, that's all it gets. I'm sorry.
yeah.
It,
It's
it
not
gets
great.
one. It gets one, just like it gets one credit. It served a function in the core set, and for a very limited time afterwards, and that was about it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I would hate to disagree. This is almost a 0 for me. Like this shit really sucks. But there are so much worse cards in the game. I guess though. Like this, at least like after the game came out, got put in a deck somewhere. You know.
Sure.
So that's at least got to give it a point. So yeah, I'll say 1. I won't hit it with the 0.
Got off with a warning this time, Jin.
Yeah. You better be watching your fucking Cyber Hadouken blasts while I'm on the beat. All right. Well, we did it. We talked about 5 cards,
We did.
and I
I'm
think that's a
impressed with
triumph.
us.
Yeah, honestly, I think that immediately we should be nominated for the fucking Pulitzer. What do podcasts get?
I don't know. Subscribers.
Yeah, clearly not us. Da 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 da.